Homeless man saves choking man, but only at the hospital discovers he's a billionaire. Richard Thompson never imagined his Monday afternoon would change completely when he decided to go out for a business meeting in downtown New York City. The 62-year-old businessman had built an empire in the construction industry, but in recent months had been facing family pressures and health problems that he kept absolutely secret. It was as he was leaving the commercial building that everything happened. Richard was in a hurry, trying to swallow a heart pill while walking on the busy sidewalk of Fifth Avenue. Suddenly, the medication got stuck in his throat. Panic took over him as his hands instinctively went to his neck, trying to breathe. The people around started to move away, some filming with cell phones, others just watching without knowing how to help. That's when William Parker appeared, a 58-year-old man with a graying beard and worn-out clothes. The homeless man didn't hesitate for a second. He ran to Richard and applied the Heimlich maneuver with surgical precision, saving his life in a matter of seconds. "Breathe slowly. Everything will be all right," said William, holding Richard by the shoulders as he caught his breath. The businessman looked at the man who had just saved his life. There was something familiar about those eyes, but he couldn't identify what it was. William helped Richard sit down on the curb and asked someone to call an ambulance. "Thank you," Richard managed to whisper, still shaken. "You saved me." "Anyone would have done the same," replied William, looking away. When the ambulance arrived, Richard insisted that William accompany him to the hospital. The homeless man hesitated but ended up accepting after much insistence. At Mercy Hospital, while Richard was undergoing tests, William waited in the waiting room. It was then that Nurse Margaret, a 65-year-old woman who had worked there for over 40 years, approached him. "Dr. William Parker, is it really you?" she asked, whispering. William quickly looked up with an expression of panic. "You're mistaken. I'm not a doctor of anything," he replied, trying to move away. "I never forget a face, especially yours. You saved my granddaughter 15 years ago," insisted Margaret. At that moment, Jennifer Thompson, Richard's daughter, arrived at the hospital. A 38-year-old woman, elegant and determined, who had built her own career as a corporate lawyer. She entered the hospital in a hurry, still wearing her work suit. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Where is my father?" Jennifer asked the receptionist. "Mr. Thompson is in room 305 undergoing tests," replied the employee. Jennifer quickly went upstairs, but before reaching the room, she saw through the corridor window her father talking to a man of suspicious appearance. She ran back down to the ground floor and confronted William. "Who are you and what do you want with my father?" questioned Jennifer with an accusatory tone. "I just helped him on the street, miss." "I don't want anything," replied William, visibly uncomfortable. "People like you always want something. How much will it cost for you to disappear from his life?" said Jennifer, taking her wallet out of her bag. William stood up abruptly, offended. "Keep your money. I don't need it," he said, walking towards the exit. It was then that Richard appeared in the corridor, still wearing the hospital gown. "Where are you going?" he asked William. "Your father is fine, I can go now," replied the homeless man. "Jennifer, what did you say to him?" questioned Richard Thompson, sensing the tension in the air. "Dad, you don't know people like this. They take advantage of situations to get money," explained Jennifer. "This person saved my life, Jennifer. Show some respect," scolded Richard Thompson. The argument was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Robert Johnson, the cardiologist in charge of Richard Thompson's tests. "Mr. Thompson, we need to talk about your test results," said the doctor, glancing discreetly at Jennifer and William Parker. "You can speak in front of them," said Richard Thompson. "You had an episode of choking on a medication. May I ask what medicine it was?" asked Dr. Robert. Richard Thompson hesitated for a moment, looking at Jennifer. "It was a heart medicine," he admitted reluctantly. "Dad, what heart medicine? You never told me you had heart problems," said Jennifer, visibly shaken. "That's what I was trying to avoid. This unnecessary worry," replied Richard Thompson. William Parker watched the conversation in silence, but something in his expression changed when he heard about the heart problems. "Mr. Thompson, you need to be more careful with your medication. Swallowing pills in a hurry can be dangerous," advised Dr. Robert. "Doctor, can my father be discharged today?" asked Jennifer. "Yes, but I recommend he undergo more rigorous cardiological follow-up," replied the doctor. After the doctor walked away, Richard Thompson addressed William Parker. "I'd like to do something for you to thank you for what you did for me," said Richard Thompson. "You don't need to do anything, Mr. Thompson," replied William Parker. "How do you know my name?" asked Richard Thompson, surprised. William Parker realized he had made a slip. "I heard the young lady call you Dad, and the doctor called you Mr. Thompson," he explained quickly. "My full name is Richard Thompson." "And yours?" insisted the businessman. "William Parker." "Just William Parker," replied the homeless man. "Last name?" asked Richard Thompson. "It doesn't matter," said William Parker, clearly uncomfortable. Jennifer watched this entire conversation with growing suspicion. There was something strange about that man, and she intended to find out what it was. "Dad, let's go home. You need to rest," said Jennifer, trying to interrupt the conversation. "Before that, I want Mr. William Parker to at least accept lunch as a thank you," insisted Richard Thompson. "I can't. I have commitments," replied William Parker. "What kind of commitments can a homeless person have?" questioned Jennifer with irony. "Jennifer!" scolded Richard Thompson, embarrassed by his daughter. "It's all right, Mr. Thompson. Your daughter is right. People like me don't belong in fancy restaurants," said William Parker, heading for the exit again. "Wait," said Richard Thompson, following him. "You misunderstood. I don't care where we eat. We can go anywhere you feel comfortable." William Parker stopped and looked at Richard Thompson with an expression that mixed surprise and something deeper. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Because you saved my life. And because—" Richard Thompson hesitated for a moment. "Because there's something about you that seems familiar to me." That phrase made William Parker even more tense. "I have a common face, Mr. Thompson. You must be mistaken," he said. "Perhaps," agreed Richard Thompson, but without much conviction. At that moment, Patricia Wilson, Richard Thompson's personal secretary of more than 20 years, arrived at the hospital. A 55-year-old woman, very efficient and discreet, who knew all the family business secrets. "Mr. Thompson, I got the call from Jennifer and came as soon as I could," said Patricia, approaching. When she saw William Parker, her face went completely pale. She stopped in the middle of the hallway as if she had seen a ghost. "Margaret, is everything all right?" asked Richard Thompson, noticing his secretary's strange reaction. "Yes, sir. I was just worried about you," she replied, trying to cover it up, but unable to take her eyes off William Parker. William Parker had also recognized her, and immediately looked away. "Margaret, this is Mr. William Parker, who saved my life today," introduced Richard Thompson. "A pleasure," said Margaret, extending her hand hesitantly. "Likewise," replied William Parker, shaking her hand quickly. "Well, I need to go," said William Parker, clearly wanting to get out of that situation. "Mr. William Parker, at least give me your phone number or address so I can find you later," requested Richard Thompson. "I don't have a phone and my address is the street," he replied. "Then where can I find you?" insisted Richard Thompson. William Parker thought for a moment. "Sometimes I stay in Times Square near the cathedral," he said, reluctant. "Then I'll look for you there tomorrow," said Richard Thompson. "No need to trouble yourself, Mr. Thompson," said William Parker. "It's no trouble, it's gratitude," replied Richard Thompson firmly. After William Parker left, Jennifer approached her father. "Father, I don't trust that man. There's something strange about him," she said. "Jennifer, he saved my life. A little gratitude doesn't hurt," replied Richard Thompson. "Margaret, didn't you think he was strange?" Jennifer asked the secretary. Margaret hesitated before answering. "He seems like a simple person," she said, choosing her words carefully. "Simple? He performed the Heimlich maneuver like a professional. Who taught that to a homeless man?" questioned Jennifer. Richard Thompson became thoughtful at his daughter's observation. "Perhaps he worked in healthcare before ending up on the streets," he suggested. "Or perhaps he's pretending to be homeless to get close to you," said Jennifer. "Jennifer, you're being paranoid," said Richard Thompson. "Father, you are a very wealthy man. There are people who would do anything for money," insisted Jennifer. "Well, tomorrow I will meet him and talk more. Perhaps that way I'll find out more about him," decided Richard Thompson. On the way back home, Jennifer couldn't stop thinking about the encounter at the hospital. There was something about Margaret's reaction that deeply bothered her. She decided she would do her own investigation into that mysterious man. The next day, Richard Thompson went to Times Square to look for William Parker. He found him sitting on the cathedral steps, reading an old book. "Good morning, Mr. William Parker," greeted Richard Thompson. "Mr. Thompson, you actually came," said William Parker, closing the book quickly. "I always keep my word." "What were you reading?" asked Richard Thompson, trying to see the book's title. "Just an old book I found around here," replied William Parker, putting the book in his backpack. "What kind of book?" insisted Richard Thompson. "Medicine," admitted William Parker reluctantly. "Medicine? Did you work in healthcare?" asked Richard Thompson, intrigued. "A long time ago," replied William Parker, clearly uncomfortable with the subject. "Is that how you learned the Heimlich maneuver?" continued Richard Thompson. "Among other things," said William Parker. "What led you to the streets?" asked Richard Thompson with genuine curiosity. William Parker was silent for a long time, looking at the people passing through the square. "Life sometimes takes us down paths we didn't choose," he replied finally. "That's true, but we can always choose a different path," said Richard Thompson. "Not always, Mr. Thompson." "Sometimes the mistakes we make can't be undone," said William Parker, with a deep sadness in his voice. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is to learn from them," said Richard Thompson. "And what if the mistake costs someone their life?" asked William Parker, looking directly at Richard Thompson. The question took the businessman by surprise. "Well, It depends on the circumstances," replied Richard Thompson hesitantly. "No, Mr. Thompson. When someone entrusts their life to you and you fail, there are no circumstances that can justify it," said William Parker, standing up. "Mr. Parker, what happened?" asked Richard Thompson, noticing the man's anguish. "Nothing you need to know about," replied William Parker, picking up his backpack. "Wait, don't leave. Let's have lunch and talk more," suggested Richard Thompson. William Parker looked at him for a moment as if fighting an internal battle. "All right," he agreed finally. They went to a simple restaurant near the square. During lunch, Richard Thompson tried to find out more about William Parker's past, but the man skillfully avoided personal questions. "Do you have a family?" asked Richard Thompson. "I did," replied William Parker simply. "What happened to them?" insisted Richard Thompson. "They abandoned me when I needed them most," said William Parker, bitterness in his voice. "I'm sorry," said Richard Thompson sincerely. "And you? Are you a widower?" asked William Parker, changing the subject. Richard Thompson was surprised by the direct question. "Yes, my wife passed away 15 years ago," he replied. William Parker stopped eating and stared at Richard Thompson. "15 years?" he asked, with a strange tension in his voice. "Yes, why?" questioned Richard Thompson. "Just curious," said William Parker, returning to his food but clearly shaken. "Was she ill?" asked William Parker after a moment. "Not exactly. It was a complicated situation," said Richard Thompson, visibly uncomfortable. "What do you mean complicated?" insisted William Parker. Richard Thompson hesitated before answering. "She had complications during surgery. The doctor, he couldn't save her," said Richard Thompson, his voice choked. William Parker dropped his fork on the plate, making a noise that drew attention from others in the restaurant. "Sorry," he said, picking up the fork with trembling hands. "Are you all right?" asked Richard Thompson, concerned. "Yes, I just remembered something," replied William Parker, clearly shaken. "Did you know someone who went through something similar?" asked Richard Thompson. "Perhaps," said William Parker, avoiding looking at Richard Thompson. The rest of the lunch proceeded in a tense atmosphere. Richard Thompson realized he had touched on a sensitive subject, but he couldn't understand why. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It's a great help to us as we're just starting out. Now continuing. As they were leaving the restaurant, William Parker stopped suddenly. "Mr. Thompson, may I ask you a question?" he said. "Of course," replied Richard Thompson. "The doctor who operated on your wife, what happened to him?" asked William Parker, looking directly at Richard Thompson. Richard Thompson was surprised by the specific question. Well, I sued him for medical malpractice. He lost his license to practice medicine, replied Richard Thompson. William Parker closed his eyes for a moment, as if he'd been punched in the stomach. And after that? He asked, his voice almost a whisper. After that, I never heard from him again. Why all this curiosity? Questioned Richard Thompson. I just wanted to understand how these situations get resolved, said William Parker, clearly lying. Mr. Parker, is there something you're not telling me? Asked Richard Thompson, staring intently at him. William Parker remained silent for a long time. Mr. Thompson, sometimes it's better to leave the past where it is, he said finally. But the past has a way of catching up with us, doesn't it? Said Richard Thompson, with a growing intuition that there was something more to that conversation. Yes, it does, agreed William Parker, with a deep sadness in his eyes. At that moment, Richard Thompson's cell phone rang. It was Jennifer. Dad, where are you? She asked, visibly upset. I'm having lunch with Mr. William Parker. Why? Replied Richard Thompson. I need to speak with you urgently. Please come home, insisted Jennifer. Is everything all right? Asked Richard Thompson, worried. Not over the phone. Come home, said Jennifer, hanging up. Mr. Parker, I need to go. My daughter seems worried about something, said Richard Thompson. It's fine, Mr. Thompson. Thank you for lunch, said William Parker. Can I meet you here again tomorrow? Asked Richard Thompson. William Parker hesitated. Perhaps it's better not to, he said. Why? Asked Richard Thompson, surprised. It's just, maybe it's better, repeated William Parker, walking towards the square. Richard Thompson watched him walk away, with a growing feeling that there was much more to that story than William Parker was willing to tell. When he got home, Jennifer was waiting for him in the living room with a folder of documents and an open laptop. Dad, sit down. I need to show you something, she said seriously. What is all this? Asked Richard Thompson, pointing to the documents. I hired a private investigator to find out who this William Parker really is, said Jennifer. Jennifer, you did what? Asked Richard Thompson, indignant. Dad, didn't you think it was strange that he knew how to perform the Heimlich maneuver? And today, the specific questions about Mom's surgery, said Jennifer. Richard Thompson stopped for a moment, remembering the conversation at the restaurant. Go on, he said reluctantly. Dad, that man isn't just any homeless person. He is Dr. William Parker Smith, the doctor who operated on Mom, revealed Jennifer, showing an old photo of William Parker in a lab coat. Richard Thompson felt the world spin around him. He took the photo with trembling hands. That's impossible, he whispered. Dad, it is him. Look closely at the photo. 15 years younger, but it's him, insisted Jennifer. Richard Thompson compared the photo with his memories of William Parker. Even with the grey beard and the premature aging from life on the streets, it was undeniably the same person. But why didn't he tell me who he was? Asked Richard Thompson, still in shock. Because he knows that you sued him and destroyed his career, replied Jennifer. And what else did the investigator find out? Asked Richard Thompson. After he lost his license to practice medicine, his wife filed for divorce. He lost his house, custody of his children, everything. He's been living on the streets for 10 years, explained Jennifer. Richard Thompson stood up and began pacing the room, visibly shaken. Dad, do you remember what happened in that surgery? Asked Jennifer. Of course I remember. Your mother died because he made a mistake, replied Richard Thompson angrily. Dad, I reviewed the entire case. The lawyer you hired lied about several things, said Jennifer, picking up another document. What do you mean, lied? Asked Richard Thompson. Mom had a rare condition that made any surgery extremely risky. Dr. William Parker Smith warned about this before the operation, but you insisted that he try, explained Jennifer. Richard Thompson stopped pacing and looked at his daughter. That's not true. He never told me that, denied Richard Thompson. Dad, it's all documented here. You signed a consent form acknowledging the risks, said Jennifer, showing him the document. Richard Thompson picked up the paper and read it carefully. Slowly, the memories of that terrible day began to return. In his pain and despair, he had chosen to blame the doctor, instead of accepting that his wife had a condition that could not be cured. I didn't remember that, admitted Richard, sitting down heavily. Father, Dr. William Parker did everything he could. The surgery lasted 8 hours. He tried to save Mother until the very last second, said Jennifer with tears in her eyes. So I destroyed an innocent man's life? Asked Richard, horrified. Yes, Father, and today that same man saved your life, said Jennifer. Richard was silent for a long time, absorbing the magnitude of what he had discovered. Where is he now? He asked finally. According to the investigator, he lives in a temporary shelter on the east side, but spends his days in Times Square, replied Jennifer. I need to find him. I need to ask for forgiveness, said Richard, standing up. Father, wait, it's not that simple, said Jennifer. How is it not simple? I committed a terrible injustice and I need to make it right, said Richard. Father, you destroyed his life. Asking for forgiveness won't give back 15 years of suffering, said Jennifer. Then what do I do? Asked Richard, desperate. First, you need to fully understand what happened. Then we need to think about how to repair the damage, said Jennifer. Keep telling me what the investigator found out, requested Richard. After Dr. William Parker lost everything, he tried to make a fresh start in other cities, but the stain on his reputation followed him. No hospital wanted to hire a doctor who had been sued for negligence, explained Jennifer. And his family? Asked Richard. The ex-wife moved to Los Angeles with the children. She got a protective order against him, claiming he was depressed and dangerous, said Jennifer. Depressed and dangerous? He doesn't seem dangerous, said Richard. Father, imagine losing everything you built in life for something that wasn't your fault. Anyone would be depressed, said Jennifer. And he never saw the children again? Asked Richard. No, Father. The last contact was 10 years ago, when they were still children, replied Jennifer. Richard felt an enormous weight in his chest. He realized that his search for justice had turned into a cruel revenge against an innocent man. Jennifer, I need to do something to fix this, he said. Father, how do you intend to fix 15 years of injustice? Asked Jennifer. I don't know, but I have to try, replied Richard, determined. The next day, Richard returned to Times Square to look for William Parker. He found him in the same spot, reading the same medical book. Mr. William Parker, called Richard, approaching. William Parker looked up and saw Richard. His expression changed immediately. Mr. Thompson, you found out, didn't you? He asked, without beating around the bush. I did, admitted Richard. Why didn't you tell me who you were? William Parker closed the book and sighed. What for? You had already punished me enough, he replied. I committed a terrible injustice against you, said Richard, his voice choked. You were suffering. It was natural to look for someone to blame, said William Parker, surprisingly without bitterness. But I destroyed your life because of it, said Richard. The fault wasn't only yours. I also made mistakes, admitted William Parker. What mistakes? You did everything you could to save my wife, said Richard. William Parker looked at Richard with an expression of surprise. You read the court records? He asked. My daughter showed me. I had forgotten the details, or maybe I never wanted to remember, admitted Richard. Your wife was a courageous woman. Even knowing the risks, she wanted to try the surgery, said William Parker. She was always like that. Never gave up on anything, said Richard Thompson with a sad smile. She made me promise that if something went wrong, I would make sure you didn't blame yourself, revealed William Parker. Richard Thompson felt tears in his eyes. She said that? He asked. They were almost her last words before the anesthesia, confirmed William Parker. And I did the exact opposite of what she wanted, said Richard Thompson guiltily. You were in shock. It's understandable, said William Parker. No, it's not understandable. I ruined your life out of pure selfishness, said Richard Thompson. William Parker was silent for a moment. Mr. Richard Thompson, may I ask a question? He said. Of course, replied Richard Thompson. Why are you doing this? Why do you care what happened to me? Asked William Parker. Because I need to correct the mistake I made, and because she would be disappointed in me if she knew what I did, admitted Richard Thompson. Your wife was a special woman. She talked about you a lot during the preoperative exams, said William Parker. What did she say? Asked Richard Thompson, curious. That you were a good man, but that sometimes you let pride speak louder than your heart, replied William Parker. Richard Thompson smiled sadly. "She knew me well," he said. "Dr. William Parker." Richard Thompson paused, correcting himself. "May I call you Doctor?" "I haven't been a doctor for 15 years, replied William Parker. "To me, you always will be. A man who dedicates his life to saving others doesn't lose that title because of an unfair lawsuit," said Richard Thompson. William Parker was visibly moved. "Thank you," he whispered. "Dr. William Parker, I want to repair the damage I caused." "How can I do that?" asked Richard Thompson. "Mr. Richard, some damages can't be repaired," replied William Parker. "But I can try. Do you want to practice medicine again?" asked Richard Thompson. William Parker laughed bitterly. "At my age and with my record? Who would hire me?" he said. "I would," said Richard Thompson, determined. "You don't have a hospital," observed William Parker. "No, but I can build one," said Richard Thompson. William Parker looked at Richard Thompson as if he had gone crazy. "Are you serious?" he asked. "Completely serious. My company builds hospitals. I can build one and put you in as the medical director," explained Richard Thompson. "Mr. Richard, that's crazy. A hospital costs millions," said William Parker. "I have millions," replied Richard Thompson simply. "But why?" asked William Parker, still not believing it. "Because it's the least I can do to make up for what I took from you," said Richard Thompson. William Parker was silent for a long time, clearly wrestling with his emotions. "What if I say I don't want your compensation?" he asked. "Then I will respect your decision. But first, I want you to meet some people," said Richard Thompson. "What people?" asked William Parker, suspicious. "People who could benefit from your medical knowledge," explained Richard Thompson. "Mr. Richard, I can't practice medicine. I lost my license," William Parker reminded him. "Not officially, but you can advise, teach, help in other ways," suggested Richard Thompson. William Parker seemed to be considering the proposal. "Where?" he asked. "There's a shelter for homeless people nearby. They always need someone with medical knowledge to help," explained Richard Thompson. "Have you already spoken with them?" asked William Parker. "Not yet, but I can speak with them if you accept," said Richard Thompson. William Parker looked around the square, observing the other homeless people. "Many of them are sick and have nowhere to go," he said thoughtfully. "Exactly. You could make a difference in their lives," said Richard Thompson. "Without being able to prescribe medication or perform medical procedures?" questioned William Parker. "So you can advise on basic care, identify emergencies, help with first aid," suggested Richard Thompson. William Parker was thoughtful for a moment. Maybe I can help in some way," he admitted reluctantly. "So you accept?" asked Richard Thompson hopefully. "I accept that I will try," replied William Parker. "Great, I'll make the contacts today," said Richard Thompson excitedly. "Mr. Richard, one thing," said William Parker, stopping Richard Thompson. "I don't want them to do this out of pity for me. It's not pity, Doctor. It's recognition of your value as a doctor and as a person," assured Richard Thompson. "And what about the hospital you mentioned?" asked William Parker. "That's a project for the future. First, let's see how things work at the shelter," explained Richard Thompson. "That makes sense," agreed William Parker. "May I pick you up here tomorrow so we can go to the shelter together?" asked Richard Thompson. "Yes, you may," replied William Parker. When Richard Thompson arrived home that afternoon, Jennifer was waiting for him anxiously. "How did it go, Dad?" she asked. "Better than I expected. He agreed to help at a shelter for the homeless," recounted Richard Thompson. "That's a start," said Jennifer. "Jennifer, I want you to help me with something," said Richard Thompson. "What is it?" she asked. "I want to create a foundation to build a hospital focused on caring for people in need," explained Richard Thompson. "Dad, that's a huge project," observed Jennifer. "I know, but I need to do something meaningful to make up for what I did," said Richard Thompson. "And did Dr. William Parker agree to participate?" asked Jennifer. "I haven't spoken about that in detail yet. I want to first see how he adapts to the work at the shelter," explained Richard Thompson. "That's a sensible approach," agreed Jennifer. "There's one thing you can do for me," said Richard Thompson. "Tell me," replied Jennifer. "Can you find out where Dr. William Parker's children are?" asked Richard Thompson. "What for, Dad?" asked Jennifer suspiciously. "Perhaps it's possible to reconnect them with their father," explained Richard Thompson. "Dad, that could be very complicated. It's been 10 years, warned Jennifer. I know, but every father deserves a second chance with his children, said Richard Thompson. And what if they don't want to see their father? Questioned Jennifer. Then we will respect their decision. But at least we will try, replied Richard Thompson. All right, Dad, I'll ask the investigator to find out where they are, agreed Jennifer. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now continuing. The next day, Richard Thompson went to pick up William Parker at the square to take him to the shelter. He found him talking to an elderly woman who seemed to be having trouble breathing. Doctor, are you seeing someone? Asked Richard Thompson, approaching. Just advising Mrs. Mary about her cough, replied William Parker. Mrs. Mary, you need to go to a health clinic. That cough could be a symptom of something more serious. But I don't have any documents, Doctor, said the woman. It doesn't matter. With Medicare, care is universal. You have the right, explained William Parker. Can you come with me? Asked the woman. I can't go in as a doctor, but I can accompany you as a friend, said William Parker. Richard Thompson observed the interaction and was impressed with the patience and kindness that William Parker showed. Mrs. Mary, this is Mr. Richard Thompson. He is going to help us sort some things out here in the square, introduced William Parker. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Mary, greeted Richard Thompson. Are you a doctor too, sir? She asked. No, I'm a businessman. But I'm here to help, replied Richard Thompson. After giving Mrs. Mary directions to the nearest health clinic, William Parker turned to Richard Thompson. All right, we can go now, he said. Doctor, how many people do you help like this, informally? Asked Richard Thompson. Several. It's not really medical care, just basic guidance, explained William Parker. Even so, what you do is incredible, said Richard Thompson. They arrived at the Fresh Start shelter, an institution that served about 200 homeless residents. The director, Susan Miller, a 50-year-old social worker, greeted them. Mr. Thompson, it's so good to meet you in person, said Susan. I've heard so much about your social work. Thank you, Susan. This is Dr. William Parker Smith, introduced Richard Thompson. Doctor, it's a pleasure to have you here, said Susan, extending her hand. The pleasure is mine, replied William Parker. Mr. Thompson explained that you would like to help our residents with medical guidance, said Susan. Yes, within my limitations, confirmed William Parker. Limitations? Asked Susan. I can't practice medicine formally, but I can provide guidance on basic health care, explained William Parker. That would be fantastic. We have many cases of people with health problems who don't know where to turn, said Susan enthusiastically. What kind of problems? Asked William Parker. Uncontrolled diabetes, hypertension, respiratory issues, infected wounds, listed Susan. I can help identify the most urgent cases and advise on where to seek proper care, offered William Parker. That would be wonderful. Would you like to see our facilities? Invited Susan. During the tour of the shelter, William Parker observed everything with a clinical eye. He made several suggestions for improving hygiene conditions and organizing the space to prevent the spread of disease. Doctor, do you have experience with preventive medicine? Asked Susan. I do. I worked on several public health projects before I came to the streets, replied William Parker. What kind of projects? Asked Susan, interested. William Parker looked at Richard Thompson before answering. Vaccination campaigns, communicable disease prevention programs, health education, he explained. That's exactly what we need here, said Susan. Could you give talks for our residents? I can try, agreed William Parker. How about we start next week, suggested Richard Thompson. Perfect, agreed Susan. As they were leaving the shelter, William Parker spoke to Richard Thompson. Mr. Thompson, thank you for giving me this opportunity, he said. Doctor, you're doing me a favor. These people need someone like you, replied Richard Thompson. It's been a long time since I felt useful, admitted William Parker. You have always been useful. You just haven't had the opportunity to show it, said Richard Thompson. That same day, Jennifer called her father with news. Dad, the investigator found out where Dr. William Parker Smith's children are, she said. Where? Asked Richard Thompson eagerly. In Los Angeles. The son, Michael, is 25 and is a nurse. The daughter, Emily, is 22 and is studying medicine, informed Jennifer. Medicine? His daughter is studying medicine? Asked Richard Thompson, surprised. Yes, Dad. Ironic, isn't it? Commented Jennifer. How is it ironic? Asked Richard Thompson. She chose the same profession as her father, even after everything that happened, explained Jennifer. That means she still admires her father, concluded Richard Thompson. Or that she wants to prove she can be a better doctor than he was, suggested Jennifer. Jennifer, did you manage to get any contact information for them? Asked Richard Thompson. I have the phone numbers and addresses. But Dad, are you sure you want to get involved in this? Or you? Questioned Jennifer. I am. A father has the right to know how his children are doing, said Richard Thompson. And what if they don't want to talk to him? Insisted Jennifer. Then at least we tried, replied Richard Thompson. Are you going to tell Dr. William Parker Smith that you found out where they are? Asked Jennifer. Not for now. I first want to know if they would be willing to talk to their father, explained Richard Thompson. And how do you plan to do that? Questioned Jennifer. Could you call them and explain the situation? Suggested Richard Thompson. Dad, this is very delicate. I'm not sure it's a good idea, hesitated Jennifer. Jennifer, imagine if it were me. If you hadn't seen me for 10 years, wouldn't you want someone to try to arrange a reunion? Argued Richard Thompson. All right, Dad. But I will be very careful in my approach, agreed Jennifer. Thank you, daughter. I know you'll do the right thing, said Richard Thompson. The following week, William Parker began his work at the shelter. On the first day, he informally attended to more than 20 people, identifying several cases that needed urgent medical attention. Doctor, you saved Mr. Joseph's life today, said Susan to William Parker. How so? Asked William Parker. Those symptoms he was having, if you hadn't told him to go to the hospital immediately, he would have had a heart attack, explained Susan. I just identified the signs. Anyone with basic knowledge would have done the same, said William Parker modestly. Doctor, you're being modest. You have a gift for this, insisted Susan. Richard Thompson, who was observing William Parker's work, was impressed with his dedication and competence. Doctor, may I speak with you for a moment? Asked Richard Thompson. Of course, replied William Parker. They moved to a more private corner. Doctor, you are doing incredible work here, praised Richard Thompson. I'm just helping how I can, replied William Parker. Have you ever thought about practicing medicine officially again? Asked Richard Thompson. Mr. Thompson, that's impossible. My license was revoked, reminded William Parker. Licenses can be recovered, especially when the revocation was unjust, said Richard Thompson. Even if it were possible, who would hire me after so many years away? Questioned William Parker. Doctor, would you like me to investigate the legal possibilities of getting your license back? Offered Richard Thompson. William Parker was silent for a moment. Why are you doing all this for me? He asked. I've already explained. I'm trying to correct an injustice, replied Richard Thompson. But this goes far beyond simple compensation, observed William Parker. Richard Thompson hesitated before answering. Doctor, may I be frank with you? He asked. Of course, replied William Parker. My wife always said I should use my wealth to help people. I never truly did that. Now by helping you, I feel I am finally honoring her memory, confessed Richard Thompson. William Parker was visibly moved. She would be proud of you, he said. Do you think so? Asked Richard Thompson. I'm sure. She was a special woman who saw the best in people, replied William Parker. So do you accept that I look into your medical license? Insisted Richard Thompson. I accept, agreed William Parker, finally. That same day, Jennifer called Michael, William Parker's son. Hello, Michael, she said when he answered. Yes, who is this? Replied a male voice. My name is Jennifer Thompson. I'm a lawyer, and I would like to speak with you about your father, said Jennifer directly. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. My father? Asked Michael finally. Yes, Dr. William Parker Smith, confirmed Jennifer. I don't have a father, said Michael coldly. Michael, I know it's difficult, but your father needs you and your sister very much right now, insisted Jennifer. What does he want now? Money? Asked Michael bitterly. No, he doesn't know I'm calling. In fact, he doesn't even know I found out where you are, explained Jennifer. Then why are you calling? Questioned Michael. Because I discovered that the story you know about your father isn't true, said Jennifer. What do you mean? Asked Michael with renewed interest. Michael, your father was not negligent in the surgery that changed your lives. He was unjustly accused, explained Jennifer. That's impossible. My mother said he killed a patient because of his incompetence, said Michael. Your mother was wrong, Michael. I reviewed the entire case. Your father was the victim of an injustice, insisted Jennifer. Why should I believe you? Asked Michael suspiciously. Because I can show you all the documents that prove his innocence, offered Jennifer. And why would someone who doesn't know my father go to all that trouble? Questioned Michael. Because it was my father who committed the injustice against yours, and now we are trying to make things right, admitted Jennifer. Michael was silent for a long time. Your father was the one who sued mine? He asked finally. Yes, confirmed Jennifer. And now you want to make amends? Asked Michael with irony. Michael, I know it's hard to believe, but your father is an extraordinary man. He recently saved my father's life, even knowing who he was, told Jennifer. How so? Asked Michael, intrigued. Jennifer told the whole story of the choking incident and the reunion at the hospital. So my father is living on the streets because of what your father did? Asked Michael with growing anger. Yes, Michael. And that's why we are trying to make things right, replied Jennifer. Where is he now? Asked Michael. In New York City. He's working at a shelter helping other homeless people, informed Jennifer. Is he still a doctor? Asked Michael. Not officially. He lost his license, but my father is helping him get it back, explained Jennifer. I want to talk to my sister before making any decision, said Michael. Of course, you can call me when you decide, said Jennifer, giving him her phone number. One question, said Michael, before hanging up. Yes, replied Jennifer. How is my father? Physically, I mean, asked Michael with concern in his voice. He's okay, all things considered. But he needs a family, replied Jennifer, honestly. Thank you, said Michael, hanging up. Michael immediately called his sister Emily. Em, you won't believe what I just found out, he said as soon as she answered. What is it? Asked Emily. Michael recounted the entire conversation with Jennifer. Do you believe this story? Asked Emily, after hearing everything. I don't know, but it would explain a lot, said Michael. How so? Asked Emily. Em, do you remember what Dad was like before all this happened? Asked Michael. I vaguely remember. I was very young, replied Emily. He was a dedicated doctor who lived to save lives. It never made sense to me that he had been negligent, said Michael. But Mom said, began Emily. Mom was hurt and she was looking for someone to blame, interrupted Michael. Michael, if this story is true, it means we abandoned our father when he needed us the most, said Emily, her voice choked up. I know, and I can't stop thinking about it, admitted Michael. What are we going to do? Asked Emily. I want to see this evidence the lawyer mentioned, Michael decided. And then, asked Emily. Then, maybe it's time to meet our father again, said Michael. 2 days later, Jennifer received a call from Michael. Jennifer, it's Michael, he said. Michael, I'm so glad you called, replied Jennifer. My sister and I have talked a lot. We want to see the evidence you mentioned, said Michael. Can I email it or would you prefer to see it in person? Offered Jennifer. In person. We want to come to New York City, Michael decided. Really? Asked Jennifer, surprised. Yes, and we want to see our father too, said Michael. Michael, that's wonderful. But you're not going to tell him you're coming, right? Asked Jennifer. Why? Asked Michael. Because it would be better as a surprise. And also because if you change your minds, he won't know about it, explained Jennifer. That makes sense, agreed Michael. When can you come? Asked Jennifer. Next weekend, replied Michael. Perfect. I'll organize everything, said Jennifer. Jennifer immediately called her father to tell him the news. Dad, they agreed to come, she said excitedly. Really? Both of them? Asked Richard Thompson, emotional. Yes, Dad. Michael and Emily are arriving on Saturday, confirmed Jennifer. And Dr. William Parker. Are we going to tell him? Asked Richard Thompson. No, Dad, it's better to be a surprise. If it goes wrong, at least he won't know about it, explained Jennifer. And if it goes right? asked Richard Thompson. "If it goes right, it will be the greatest gift we can give him," replied Jennifer. During the days leading up to the arrival of William Parker's children, Richard Thompson observed the doctor working at the shelter. He noticed that he seemed more upbeat and confident, as if he had found a new purpose. "Doctor, you seem different," commented Richard Thompson. "How so?" asked William Parker. "More alive. As if you had recovered something you had lost," explained Richard Thompson. "It's because I feel useful again," admitted William Parker. "It had been years since I felt I was making a difference in people's lives." "You always made a difference. You just didn't have the chance to show it," said Richard Thompson. "Mr. Thompson, can I make a confession?" asked William Parker. "Of course," replied Richard Thompson. "There are days when I think about giving up on everything, about leaving the streets and trying for a fresh start. But then I remember I no longer have family or friends or purpose," confessed William Parker. "And now?" asked Richard Thompson. "Now I feel that maybe there's still hope for me," said William Parker with a timid smile. Richard Thompson felt his heart tighten, knowing that in a few days William Parker would have the biggest surprise of his life. On Saturday morning, Michael and Emily arrived in New York City. Jennifer picked them up from the airport and took them directly to her house. "How was the trip?" asked Jennifer. "Long and anxious," replied Emily. "I couldn't sleep thinking about what we're going to find." "What if he doesn't want to see us?" asked Michael. "Believe me, he will want to," assured Jennifer. At home, Jennifer showed them all the documents from the case against William Parker. Michael and Emily read everything carefully. "I can't believe our mother lied to us," said Emily, with tears in her eyes. She didn't exactly lie. She believed the version that was presented to her, defended Michael. "Michael, our father, was innocent, and we abandoned him," said Emily, sobbing. "Emily, we were children. We couldn't have known the truth," consoled Michael. "But now we know, and now?" asked Emily. "Now we go meet our father," decided Michael. "Where is he?" asked Emily. "At the shelter where he works. My father is there with him," informed Jennifer. "How is he? Physically, I mean," asked Emily. "Older, thinner, but still the man who saved my father," answered Jennifer. "Shall we go now?" asked Michael eagerly. "Let's go," agreed Emily. The walk to the shelter was tense. Michael and Emily were visibly nervous, not knowing what the reunion with their father would be like after 10 years. "What if he turns us away?" asked Emily. "He won't," assured Jennifer. "How can you be so sure?" asked Michael. "Because he is your father, and fathers always forgive their children," replied Jennifer. When they arrived at the shelter, Richard Thompson was talking with Susan Miller at the reception desk. Jennifer signaled for them to wait outside while she called her father. "Dad, they're here," whispered Jennifer. "Where are they?" asked Richard Thompson anxiously. "Outside. They're very nervous," answered Jennifer. "And Dr. William Parker?" asked Richard Thompson. "He's in the examination room with some patients," informed Susan Miller. "Susan, can you please call him here? Tell him it's urgent," requested Richard Thompson. While Susan Miller went to get William Parker, Richard Thompson went outside to get Michael and Emily. "Are you ready?" he asked them. "I think so," replied Michael, his voice trembling. "Remember, he doesn't know you're here. It will be a shock for him too," warned Richard Thompson. When they entered the shelter, William Parker was walking down the hall toward the reception area. He stopped suddenly when he saw the two familiar figures. "Michael? Emily," he whispered, unable to believe his eyes. "Dad," said Emily with tears in her eyes. William Parker stood frozen for a moment, then began walking slowly toward his children. You came to see me?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. "We came to ask for your forgiveness," said Michael. "Forgiveness? For what?" asked William Parker, confused. "For believing you were guilty, for abandoning you when you needed us the most," explained Emily, sobbing. William Parker looked at Richard Thompson, who nodded, confirming that the children knew everything. "You know the truth?" asked William Parker. "We know, Dad. And we want you to forgive us," said Michael. William Parker opened his arms and both children ran to him. The three of them stood embracing in the middle of the hallway, crying and trying to speak at the same time. "I missed you so much," whispered William Parker. "We missed you too, Dad," said Emily. "I thought I would never see you again," admitted William Parker. "We did too," said Michael. Richard Thompson and Jennifer watched the reunion with tears in their eyes. "Dad, are you all right? Are you eating properly?" asked Emily, concerned. "I am now," answered William Parker, smiling through his tears. "Dad, we want you to come live with us again," said Michael. "Michael, I can't." "My life is here now," replied William Parker. "Dad, you can't keep living on the streets," insisted Emily. "Children, a lot has changed." "I have changed," explained William Parker. "We've changed too, Dad." "Emily is studying medicine," Michael told him. William Parker looked at his daughter with surprise and pride. "Medicine, even after everything that happened?" he asked. "Because of everything that happened, Dad. I wanted to prove that the doctors in the Smith family are not negligent," explained Emily. William Parker was visibly moved. "And you, Michael?" asked William Parker. "I'm a nurse, Dad. I also chose to care for people," replied Michael. "Both of you in healthcare," said William Parker, pride in his voice. "We learned from the best," said Emily. At that moment, Susan Miller approached the group. "Dr. William Parker, may I interrupt for a moment?" she asked. "Of course, Susan," replied William Parker. "Are these your children?" she asked, smiling. "Yes," replied William Parker with pride. "What a beautiful reunion. You used to talk about them so much," said Susan. "Dad talked about us?" asked Emily, surprised. "Every single day he always said he had 2 children who were doctors," told Susan. "Doctors?" asked Michael. "To your father, nurses are also part of the medical field," explained Susan. William Parker smiled timidly. "Dad, you never forgot us?" asked Emily. "Not even for one day," admitted William Parker. "Then why did you never try to find us?" asked Michael. "Because I thought you were better off without me," replied William Parker. "We were never better off without you, Dad," said Emily. Richard Thompson approached the group. "Doctor, sorry to interrupt, but may I speak with you for a moment?" he asked. "Of course," replied William Parker. "Doctor, now that your children are here, perhaps it's time we talked about the hospital project," said Richard Thompson. "What hospital project?" asked Michael and Emily almost in unison. "Mr. Richard wants to build a hospital and has invited me to be the medical director," explained William Parker. "Dad, that's fantastic," exclaimed Emily. "But I can't practice medicine officially," reminded William Parker. "Doctor, about that," said Richard Thompson, taking an envelope from his pocket. "What is this?" asked William Parker. "Your medical license has been restored," announced Richard Thompson. William Parker took the envelope with trembling hands and read the document. "How is this possible?" he asked, incredulous. "My lawyers filed a petition for a case review. With the new evidence, the medical board decided to restore your license," explained Richard Thompson. "Dad, you can be a doctor again," said Michael, excited. "After 15 years," whispered William Parker, still processing the information. "Doctor, does this mean you accept directing the hospital?" asked Richard Thompson. William Parker looked at his children, then at Richard Thompson. "I accept, but on one condition," he said. "What is it?" asked Richard Thompson. "I want my children to be part of the project," replied William Parker. "Dad, I'm still studying," reminded Emily. "You can do your internship and residency at our hospital," suggested William Parker. "And me?" asked Michael. "You can be the nursing coordinator," proposed William Parker. "Working with my father and my sister, it would be a dream," said Michael, moved. "Then it's decided. We will build this hospital together," announced Richard Thompson. 6 months later, the construction of Hope Memorial Hospital was well underway. William Parker, who now lived in an apartment rented by Richard Thompson, visited the construction site every day accompanied by his children. "Dad, you chose the perfect location," said Emily, observing the view of the needy area where the hospital was being built. "It was Mr. Richard who chose it. He said he wanted to build where the need was greatest," told William Parker. "And are you happy?" asked Michael. "Happier than I thought possible to be again," admitted William Parker. During those months, the relationship between William Parker and his children had grown stronger. They met every day, making up for the lost years. "Dad, can I make a confession?" said Emily. "Of course," replied William Parker. "I chose medicine because I wanted to understand what really happened in that surgery," she confessed. "And what did you discover?" asked William Parker. "That you did everything right. The patient had a rare condition that made the surgery almost impossible," explained Emily. "How did you find that out?" asked William Parker. "I studied the case as part of a college project. Your procedures were impeccable," said Emily. William Parker was moved. "Thank you for that," he said. "For what?" asked Emily. "To prove to me that I'm not the incompetent doctor I thought I was all these years," explained William Parker. "Dad, you were never incompetent. You are the best doctor I know," said Michael. "Even after losing 15 years of my career?" asked William Parker. "Especially because of that. You never stopped studying, you never stopped caring about people," observed Emily. "You both make me very proud," said William Parker. "You make us proud too, Dad," said Michael. That same day, Richard Thompson arrived at the construction site accompanied by Patricia Wilson, his secretary. "Dr. William Parker, it's good to see you here," greeted Richard Thompson. "Mr. Thompson, how are the final preparations going?" asked William Parker. "Almost ready. Patricia brought the final contracts for you to sign," explained Richard Thompson. "What contracts?" asked William Parker. "Your salary as medical director and the benefits for your children," explained Patricia Wilson. "Benefits?" asked Michael. "A full scholarship for Emily to finish medical school and a career plan for Michael," listed Patricia Wilson. "This is too much," protested William Parker. "Doctor, this isn't generosity. It's justice," said Richard Thompson. "How so?" asked William Parker. "You lost 15 years of your career because of me. I'm trying to make up for at least part of that," explained Richard Thompson. Emily approached Richard Thompson. "Mr. Thompson, may I ask a question?" she said. "Of course," replied Richard Thompson. "Why are you doing all this?" 15 years later?" asked Emily. Richard Thompson thought for a moment before answering. "Because I learned it's never too late to do the right thing, and because your father taught me that forgiveness is more powerful than revenge," replied Richard Thompson. "How so?" asked Emily. "When he found out who I was, he could have let me die choking. Instead, he saved me. That showed me the kind of man he really is," explained Richard Thompson. William Parker was moved by Richard Thompson's words. "Mr. Thompson, I saved you by instinct. Any doctor would have done the same," he said. "No, doctor, you saved me out of compassion." "Even after everything I did to you," corrected Richard Thompson. "And it was that compassion that brought us here," observed Jennifer, who had just arrived. "Jennifer, did you come to see how it's looking?" asked Richard Thompson. "I came to bring a surprise for everyone," said Jennifer, smiling. "What surprise?" everyone asked, curious. "The hospital will open next week," announced Jennifer. "Already?" asked William Parker, surprised. "The last equipment arrived yesterday. Everything is ready," confirmed Jennifer. "And the staff?" asked Michael. "We've already hired the entire team, doctors, nurses, technicians," informed Jennifer. "Based on what criteria?" asked William Parker. "Competence and social commitment. We want people who identify with the hospital's mission," explained Jennifer. "What mission?" asked Emily. "Quality care for everyone, regardless of their social condition," replied Richard Thompson. "Will this be financially sustainable?" asked Michael, concerned. "Yes. We will have private patients and insurance plans to subsidize the free treatments," explained Richard Thompson. "And if there's a loss?" insisted Michael. "There won't be. But if there is, I'll cover it," guaranteed Richard Thompson. "Dad, are you sure about that?" asked Jennifer. "Absolutely. This project is the most important thing I've ever done in my life," affirmed Richard Thompson. The following week, Hope Memorial Hospital was inaugurated in an emotional ceremony. William Parker gave a speech as medical director. 15 years ago, I lost everything I had. Family, career, dignity, he began, his voice choked with emotion. I spent years on the streets, thinking my life was over. That I had nothing left to offer the world, he continued. But today I am here with my children by my side, running a hospital that will save lives, he said, looking at Michael and Emily. I learned that sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what truly matters, William Parker went on. And what matters isn't titles or money. It's the opportunity to serve others, he said. That is why I dedicate this hospital to all those who, like me, once lost hope, declared William Parker, because it's never too late for a fresh start. It's never too late for forgiveness, and it's never too late to make a difference in someone's life, he concluded, to emotional applause. After the ceremony, Richard Thompson approached William Parker. "Doctor, that was a beautiful speech," he praised. "Thank you, and thank you for everything you did for me," said William Parker. "Doctor, actually, you are the one who saved me," said Richard Thompson. "How so?" asked William Parker. "You taught me that wealth only has value when it's used to help others. For the first time in my life, I feel my money has a real purpose," explained Richard Thompson. "And I learned that forgiveness frees the one who forgives more than the one who is forgiven," said William Parker. "Then we both came out ahead," concluded Richard Thompson, extending his hand. "Yes, we both came out ahead," agreed William Parker, shaking the offered hand. At that moment, Emily approached the two men. "Father, Mr. Thompson, may I interrupt?" she asked. "Of course," they both replied. "I want you both to know that you changed my life," said Emily. "How so?" asked William Parker. "Seeing your forgiveness taught me that medicine is so much more than curing diseases. It's about healing people," she explained. "That is very beautiful, Emily," said Richard Thompson, "and I promise I will honor that lesson throughout my entire career," declared Emily. Michael also joined the group. "Father, I was thinking," he said. "About what?" asked William Parker. "About creating a program to train other professionals to care for people experiencing homelessness," proposed Michael. "Michael, that is an excellent idea," praised William Parker. "May I coordinate this program?" asked Michael. "Of course. And you can count on the hospital's full support," William Parker assured him. "Mr. Thompson, do you authorize it?" asked Michael. "I authorize it and fully support it," replied Richard Thompson. 2 years later, Hope Memorial Hospital had become a benchmark for community care. William Parker was in his office when he received an unexpected visitor. "Dr. William Parker?" a woman asked from the doorway. "Yes, that's me," he replied, standing up. "I'm Sarah Smith, your ex-wife," she said. William Parker was visibly shaken. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" he asked. "I came to ask for your forgiveness," she said with tears in her eyes. "Forgiveness? For what?" asked William Parker, confused. "For believing the lies, for turning the children against you, for not fighting for your innocence," explained Sarah, sobbing. William Parker was silent for a moment. "Sarah, you were hurting. It was natural to look for someone to blame," he said, repeating the same words he had said to Richard Thompson years before. "But I was your wife. I should have trusted you," insisted Sarah. "The past cannot be changed, Sarah. What's important is the present," said William Parker. "Can you forgive me?" asked Sarah. "I forgave you a long time ago," William Parker replied sincerely. "And can you forgive me for keeping you from our children?" insisted Sarah. "Sarah, our children are with me now. We work together every day. That is what matters," said William Parker. "You are a much better man than I deserved," admitted Sarah. "We are only human, Sarah. We all make mistakes," said William Parker. "May I see the hospital?" asked Sarah. "Of course. Michael and Emily are here. They'll be happy to see you," said William Parker. During the tour of the hospital, Sarah was impressed with the work William Parker had developed. "William, you achieved your dream," she said. "What dream?" asked William Parker. "To have a hospital where you could treat those who really need it," Sarah reminded him. "You remember that?" asked William Parker, surprised. "I remember all your dreams, and I'm proud to see that you managed to achieve them," said Sarah. "It was a difficult path," admitted William Parker, "but you made it, and you brought our children along with you," observed Sarah. "Our children are amazing people," said William Parker, with pride. "They take after their father," said Sarah, smiling. At the end of the day, William Parker found Richard Thompson in the administration room. "Mr. Richard, Sarah was here today," he told him. "Your ex-wife. How did it go?" asked Richard Thompson. "Better than I expected. She came to ask for forgiveness," explained William Parker. "And how do you feel?" asked Richard Thompson. At peace. Finally, at peace, replied William Parker. Doctor, may I make an observation? Said Richard Thompson. Of course, replied William Parker. You are the strongest man I know, declared Richard Thompson. Why? Asked William Parker. Because you went through everything you went through and still kept the ability to forgive, explained Richard Thompson. Forgiveness sets us free, Mr. Richard. Forgiveness sets us free, said William Parker. You taught me that, admitted Richard Thompson. And you taught me that it's never too late to fix our mistakes, said William Parker. So we both learned something important, concluded Richard Thompson. Yes, and most importantly, we learned together, said William Parker. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this moving story of forgiveness and redemption. Do you believe Richard Thompson made the right decision in seeking to repair the damage he caused? And did Dr. William Parker Smith manage to show the true strength of forgiveness? Leave your opinion in the comments and don't forget to give it a like, so more people can learn about this touching story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other narratives that show how love and compassion can transform lives.